The conservative majority on the Supreme Court today ruled that the court would allow to stand the president's ban on transgender individuals joining the military, at least for now. You might recall during the 2016 presidential campaign, LGBTQ allies of then-candidate Donald Trump pledged that Trump would be great for their community. Caitlyn Jenner went so far as to post a video on Facebook showing her walking into a women's room at Trump Tower. So, 2 years into the Trump presidency, with measure after measure suggesting administration hostility to LGBTQ equality, how are those allies explaining today what the president is doing? CNN's Jessica Dean joins me now. Jessica, the president even used the term LGBTQ at the Republican convention, the first time a nominee ever did that. But I guess actions speak louder than those 5 letters.
Yeah, Jake, this was the issue we wanted to look into with this story today, because 2 years into President Trump's term, it is hard to find evidence that he's making good on some really big promises.
Promises made, promises kept. Candidate Donald Trump was quick to promise his advocacy for the LGBTQ community.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens, believe me.
A handful of high-profile members of that community tried to assure their peers Trump would be in their corner, including the current ambassador to Germany, Rick Grenell, who is the president's first ambassador to identify as a gay man and one of his strongest LGBTQ supporters. Grenell, a former U.S. spokesman at the United Nations, had been appointed by President George W. Bush and worked for former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney. In 2016, he voiced unqualified support for candidate Trump, tweeting, "Donald Trump is the best GOP candidate the LGBT community has ever seen."
Hello, my fellow Republicans.
Reality star Caitlyn Jenner also endorsed Trump, telling Stat News, quote, he backed the LGBT community in the controversy about transgender people using public restrooms. Tech entrepreneur Peter Thiel, who's gay, even spoke at the Republican National Convention in support of Trump.
Tonight, I urge all of my fellow Americans to stand up and vote for Donald Trump.
Has President Trump ultimately made good on his promises? Here's the track record. Today, after months of legal debate sparked by presidential tweets in 2017, the Supreme Court will allow the Trump administration's ban on transgender people serving in the military to take effect, pending outcomes from lower courts. According to the National Center for Transgender Equality, 15,000 transgender people are currently serving. It's unclear how many will be affected by today's ruling.
I know that this ban causes a huge amount of pain, both to the military community and to the trans community, and I know that we can do better.
Jerry Ann Henry is the executive director of the Log Cabin Republicans, the largest Republican organization to represent the interests of LGBTQ conservatives. The group did not endorse candidate Trump in the 2016 election. In October, the New York Times reported the administration was considering a proposal to narrowly define sex under Title IX as being unchangeable and determined by one's genitals at birth, another direct shot at the transgender community, not to mention a denial of the emerging medical consensus. And in November, the Des Moines Register reported the Trump administration pressured the federally funded National 4-H Youth Organization to withdraw a new policy that offered protection to LGBTQ members of its group, which ultimately led to the firing of its leader in Iowa.
It's one thing to carry a flag, it's a whole nother thing to actually advocate for policies and enact policies that benefit a community. So I would love to see him take a few steps and work with a group like ours.
While Log Cabin Republicans think there's room to advocate and negotiate, more liberal groups like the Human Rights Campaign see a bleaker picture when it comes to the Trump administration and LGBTQ rights and protections.
Donald Trump went to office and looked across government, and day in and day out has asked the question, what can we do to undermine protections for LGBTQ people and, quite frankly, marginalized people all across this country?
I, Donald John Trump.
Since President Trump took office, some of his most prominent LGBTQ backers have rescinded their support. In 2017, BuzzFeed reported Peter Thiel had privately called the Trump administration, quote, incompetent. Caitlyn Jenner was more public with her rebuke, writing an op-ed in the Washington Post in October that read in part, quote, "Believing that I could work with Trump and his administration to support our community was a mistake."
When it comes to actions they like, the executive director of the Log Cabin Republicans said they were happy to see Rick Grinnell become an ambassador. She also pointed to the administration's decision to keep an Obama-era executive order in place that protects LGBTQ employees working for federal contractors from discrimination. That's something that group lobbied the administration to do. Jake?
Still, a lot of disappointment from the president's LGBTQ believers. Jessica Dean, thank you so much.